Welcome to The Explainer, where we turn these huge, complex topics into a story that just clicks. And today, we're tackling a big one, the 4 billion-year history of life on Earth. It's an epic tale, and we're going to map it out together.
So, let's start with the big question, right? How are you, me, a tree, a mushroom, how are we all related? I mean, really, how do you even begin to map a family tree that's 4 billion years old?
All right, to even begin to answer that, we have to go way, way back in time. Take a look at this timeline. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? See that tiny, tiny sliver right at the end? Yeah, that's all of recorded human history. Everything we're about to dive into happened in the vast expanse of time before that. It's just mind-boggling. Okay, let's set the stage. Our story starts at the very beginning, with the birth of our planet. And I want you to forget everything you know about Earth today, because this was a completely alien world. So, around 4.6 billion years ago, our planet was born, swirling together from all the dust and gas left over from the sun's formation. But for hundreds of millions of years, it was a total nightmare. It was way, way too hostile for life to get a foothold. Just try to picture it, a world of raging volcanoes constantly spewing out gas. The sky wasn't blue. It was this thick, toxic soup of methane, ammonia, and water vapor. And here's the kicker. There was pretty much zero oxygen. Nothing like what we breathe today.
So you've got this harsh, chaotic planet. How does life even begin in a place like that? Well, the leading idea is that it all started in what scientists call a kind of primordial soup.
The theory goes that in the early oceans, you had all these simple chemicals floating around. With a little jolt of energy, maybe from lightning or volcanoes, they started to form the first simple building blocks of life, things like amino acids. It was a really cool idea, but for a long time, it was just that, an idea. Until, that is, one absolutely brilliant experiment changed everything. Okay, so back in the 1950s, two scientists, Miller and Urey, decided to test this whole primordial soup thing. They basically built a mini early Earth in their lab. They filled a flask with the gases they thought were in the atmosphere back then, added some water for the ocean, and then zapped it with electricity to simulate lightning. And you won't believe what happened. After just a week, organic molecules, the very stuff that makes up proteins in our bodies, had formed all by themselves. It was incredible. They proved that the building blocks of life could actually arise from non-living chemistry, a total game changer. So, okay, life gets started. But that's just the beginning of the story, right? The next huge challenge for scientists was, how do we map this? I mean, how do you even begin to untangle a family history that stretches back billions of years? Well, that's where a field of science called phylogeny comes in. Phylogeny is basically the science of life's family tree. Its whole goal is to figure out who's related to whom and to trace those lines of descent all the way back to the very first organism. So how do they build this tree? Well, they used two main kinds of clues. For a long time, all we had was morphological evidence. Looking at physical traits. Does it have bones, fur, how many legs? But now we have something way more powerful. Molecular evidence. We can look directly at the DNA, the actual genetic blueprint. And that's really the gold standard, because you're reading the history book of life itself, written in the language of genes. Okay, so all this data, both physical and genetic, gets organized into these diagrams called cladograms. They're one of the most important tools in biology for showing these evolutionary relationships. Now, I know they can look a little intimidating at first, but once you know what you're looking for, they're actually super simple and elegant. So, here's a basic cladogram. The best way to think about it is just like a family tree diagram. Every time you see a spot where the line splits into two branches, that's what we call a node. And that node represents a common ancestor. The great-great-great, you get the idea, grandparent, from which two new groups eventually split off. And reading it is actually really easy. All you have to do is trace the branches. So for example, look at D and E. If you follow their lines back, you see they connect at a point that's more recent than the point where they connect with C. And what does that mean? It means D and E are more closely related to each other than either of them is to C. It's all about how recently you shared a common ancestor. That's the key. Now, this here is a phylogenetic tree. It's basically a cladogram with some extra information packed in. Sometimes the length of the branches can actually represent time, so you can see not just who was related, but roughly when they split apart. And check out branch F, how it just stops. A branch that doesn't reach the present-day line represents an extinct group. Their chapter in the story of life has come to an end.
All right, so this family tree hasn't just been a slow, steady growth over billions of years. No way. Along the way, there have been these huge, game-changing events that totally reshaped the tree and sent life in brand new directions.
And one of the first and biggest game changers was the rise of oxygen. You see, these tiny photosynthetic bacteria started churning out oxygen, but it was a waste product. And for most life on Earth at the time, this oxygen was pure poison. It caused a massive extinction event. But for the organisms that could survive it, and even learn to use it, it was like discovering a superpower. It unlocked so much more energy and paved the way for bigger, more complex life to evolve.
Another incredible leap forward came not from competition, but from cooperation. It's called the endosymbiotic theory, and it's wild. The idea is that billions of years ago, one simple cell tried to eat another one, but instead of digesting it, the little guy just moved in. They started working together. That little cell that moved in eventually became what we now call mitochondria, the power plants inside every single one of our cells. This one event basically kickstarted the evolution of all complex life on Earth, including us.
So when you step back and look at it all, from a lifeless, molten planet to this incredible, complex web of life we see today, it's just amazing. We've learned how to read this epic 4 billion-year-old story that's written in the DNA of every living thing. It's a journey that connects every single one of us. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? We've mapped the past, so what's the next branch on the tree gonna look like?